Dear Father in heaven,
Lieber Vater im Himmel,
we thank you for this Sabbath we could have.
wir danken dir für diesen Sabbat, den wir haben dürfen.
Please forgive us where we allowed Satan to tempt us and to wherever we might have broken the Sabbath.
Und bitte vergebe uns, wo wir Satan erlaubt haben, dass er uns versucht haben, möglicherweise den Sabbat zu brechen.
And we ask you to please now bless us as we enter the new week.
Und wir bitten, dass du uns jetzt segnest, als wir jetzt diese neue Woche hineingehen.
And that you would please give us again the holy oil from your word.
Und dass du uns wieder den heiligen Öl von deinem Wort hergeben mögest.
That you can keep us in the right hand of your righteousness.
Und dass du uns in den rechten Hand deine Gerechtigkeit bewahren kannst.
And therefore please now bless us this evening.
So bitte segne uns in diesen Abend.
And please make a lasting impression upon our minds and hearts.
Und bitte hinterlässt einen bleibenden Eindruck auf unserem Herzen, unseren Verstand.
And we ask and pray in Jesus' name.
Und wir bitten und beten in Jesu Namen.
Amen.
Amen.
Okay. So I posted the notes in the live stream group.
So, ich habe die Notizen in der Livestream-Gruppe gepostet.
And I want to build upon what Brother Mark shared this Sabbath sermon.
Und ich möchte darauf bauen, auf das, was Bruder Mark in den Predigt heute dargestellt hat.
And we saw that according to Matthew 24, there are these 3 times the false prophets are marked,
Und
right?
wir haben gesehen, gemäß Matthäus 24, diese 3 verschiedene Male, wo diese falschen Propheten markiert sind.
And the 3 times were at the beginning of the Sunday law, right?
Diese 3 Male am Anfang des Sonntagsgesetzes.
Then here the next waymark, the midnight cry.
Denn hier an der nächsten Wegmarke, das wäre der Mitternachtsruf.
And then here just the end, the final deception, right?
Und hier am Ende der letzte Verführung.
And what is always connected with these false prophets coming up?
Und was ist immer mit diesen falschen Propheten verbunden? End of a time of peace.
Yes, that's what I wanted to
Fallen.
fallen away. Okay.
Ein Wegfallen.
Okay. So illustrated also by stars falling from heaven.
Dargestellt von Sternen, die vom Himmel fallen.
So we could see here at the Sunday law, the man of sin is revealed,
So, wir konnten hier sehen am Sonntagsgesetz, dass der Mensch der Sünde
and
geoffenbart
a
wird.
falling away takes place.
Ein Wegfallen findet statt.
But here at the next waymark, the same principle repeats only in greater intensity. Right?
Hier an der nächsten Wegmarke, also dasselbe Prinzip, nur in größerem Ausmaß.
Okay, and so this being brought down would be here, right?
So, dieses hier, der hinuntergebracht würde, wäre denn das hier.
Yeah. But when you now go here and bring this down, this would be here, right?
Und wenn du dies hier bringst und hier unterbringst, das wäre hier sein.
Okay, Brother Mark, he forgot to draw this third line this morning, so it was a little bit maybe
Bruder Mark hat vergessen, diese dritte Linie hier zu
confusing to some
zeichnen.
degree.
So.
Okay, so therefore, yeah, actually you could then mark also false prophets here.
Deswegen konntest du auch falsche Propheten hier markieren.
Okay, so it's just the Sunday law brought down here is therefore then this is this. Okay.
So, dieses Sonntagsgesetz hier hinuntergebracht haben, ist nur das ist hier.
And when you then bring this down here,
Und wenn du dieses hier hinunterbringst,
then would be this this.
dann dies wäre dies gleich.
Yes?
Amen.
Okay. So therefore always you have false prophets coming up in this illustration or in this illustration.
So, deswegen hast du falsche Propheten hier, die immer aufkommen in diese Darstellung oder in diese Darstellung.
Okay, so. And what precedes is, we always saw as a little time of peace.
Und
Right?
was es vorausgeht, ist, wie wir gesehen haben, ist immer eine kleine Zeit des Friedens.
Alright, good. Now let's go to our notes.
So, zu den Notizen jetzt.
And the first quote is a quote by Sister White where she speaks about an encounter at a certain SDA church.
Und dieses erste Zitat ist ein Zitat von Ellen White, wo sie eine Begegnung in eine gewisse STA-Gemeinde hatte.
So as you have the meeting at Johnson, I think,
Vermont.
Vermont, yes.
Also das ist ein Treffen Johnson VT, VT ist Vermont.
And she met there with certain fanatics.
Und sie hat einige Fanatiker da getroffen.
Okay, so let's read
So lass
through
uns
this quote.
dies lesen.
It says, soon we returned to Vermont and held a remarkable meeting at Johnson. On our way, we stopped several days at the home of Brother E.P. Butler. We found that he and others of our brethren in northern Vermont had been sorely perplexed and tried by the false teachings and wild fanaticism of a group of people who were claiming entire sanctification and under the garb of great holiness were following a course of life that was a disgrace to the Christian name. Okay, so was a group claiming this false holiness.
So eine Gruppe, die diese falsche Heiligkeit von sich behaupteten.
The two men who were leaders in the fanaticism were in life and character much like those we met 4 years before in Claremont, New Hampshire. They taught the doctrine of extreme sanctification, claiming that they could not sin and were ready for translation. They practiced mesmerism and claimed to receive the divine enlightenment while in a sort of trance. Okay, so they hypnotized all the other people.
So sie haben alle anderen hypnotisiert.
They did not engage in regular work, but in company with two women, not their wives, they traveled about from place to place, forcing themselves upon the hospitality of the people. So what were they doing?
So was taten sie?
They forced themselves upon others, right?
Sie drängten sich anderen auf.
And if you just remember, not so long ago there was a few people in our group that tried to justify themselves by forcing themselves upon us. Okay.
Und weil sie erinnert, nicht so lange her, es gab einige in unserer Gruppe, die versuchten, sich rechtfertigen, indem dass sie sich uns aufzwangen.
No, they forced themselves upon us and justified themselves by doing this. They said basically it's good to do this.
Also sie zwangten sich uns auf und rechtfertigen sich deswegen.
No, they forced themselves upon us and they justified themselves in doing this.
They justified themselves that it's right to force yourself upon people.
No, I'm sure
Okay.
I said that twice.
No, not really.
I didn't? Okay, then maybe my German's not wrong, but I did understand what you're saying.
Okay,
Explain to me what I should say.
Okay, so sie haben sich uns selbst, also sie haben sich aufgezwungen und haben sich dann noch gerechtfertigt, das zu tun. Sie haben gesagt, es wäre in Ordnung, das zu tun.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll continue. So they forced themselves upon this hospitality of the people. Through their subtle mesmeric influence, they had secured a large degree of sympathy from some of the grown-up children of our brethren. Brother Butler was a man of stern integrity. He was thoroughly aroused to the evil influence of the fanatical theories and was active in his opposition to their false teachings and arrogant pretensions. Moreover, he made it plain to us that he had no faith in visions of any sort. Okay, so because they had these false visions, he then rejected all kind of visions. Okay.
So, weil sie diese falsche Vision hatten, verwarf alle Visionen.
Rather reluctantly, Brother Butler consented to attend the meeting at the home of Brother Lovejoy at Johnson. The two men who were the leaders in the fanaticism and who had greatly deceived and oppressed God's children came into the meeting, accompanied by the two women dressed in white linen, with their long black hair hanging loose about their shoulders. The white linen dresses were to represent the righteousness of the saints. So now these fanatics appeared. Okay?
Jetzt erschienen diese Fanatiker.
I had a message of reproof for them, and while I was speaking, the foremost of the two men kept his eyes fastened upon me, as mesmerists had done before. But I had no fear of his mesmeric influence. Strength was given me from heaven to rise above the satanic power. The children of God who had been held in bondage began to breathe free and rejoice in the Lord. So basically, she could not be hypnotized and then she reproved them.
So,
Okay.
sie konnte nicht hypnotisiert werden und dann tadelte sie.
As our meetings progressed, these fanatics sought to rise and speak, but they could not find opportunity. It was made plain to them that their presence was not wanted, but they chose to remain. Okay, so clearly was told to them they were not welcomed.
Es
Okay?
war klar, es wurde sie gezeigt, dass sie nicht da willkommen waren.
And I also remember in this group chat, Brother Mark, one time he said, "You're not welcomed here."
Ich erinnere mich in einer von diesen Gruppen auf den Livestream, nicht Livestream, eine von diesen Gruppen, dass Bruder Mark hat gesagt zu einigen, ihr seid hier nicht willkommen.
And they basically turned around, yeah, Christ never said you're not to anybody you are not welcomed.
Und dann haben sie gesagt, ja, Christus hat nie gesagt, du bist hier nicht willkommen oder solches.
But that's false, okay?
Das ist nicht richtig.
Because here we can clearly see it was made plain to them that they were not welcomed.
Hier
Okay.
können wir klar sehen, dass es sagt hier, es wurde ihnen klar gemacht, dass sie nicht willkommen waren.
And what was the difference between Judas and, let's say, these fanatics?
Und was war der Unterschied zwischen zum Beispiel Judas und diesen Fanatikern?
Judas got up and left. Judas did it in secret.
Yes, Judas did these things in secret. Okay.
Judas hat diese Dinge heimlich gemacht.
Yeah, but these fanatical people, they forced themselves upon other people.
Aber
Okay.
diese Fanatiker, sie haben sich anderen aufgezwungen.
And they publicly tried to push their false doctrines on others. Okay.
Öffentlich haben sie versucht, deren Lehren auf anderen aufzuzwingen.
And it clearly says in the Bible, in Spirit of Prophecy, public sin needs to be publicly rebuked.
Das
Okay.
klar, sagt klar in der Geist der Weissagung, dass öffentliche Sünde muss öffentlich getadelt werden.
And therefore we need always to discern and differentiate in the right way. Okay.
Deswegen müssen wir immer unterscheiden in der richtigen Art und Weise.
Okay. Let's continue.
Müssen wir weiter.
So it was made plain to them that their presence was not wanted, but they chose to remain. Then Brother Samuel rose, seized the back of the chair in which one of the women was sitting, and drew her out of the room across the porch unto the lawn. Was this unchristlike?
So war das unchristlich.
Okay, that's what they would say, right?
Das ist, was sie sagen würden.
Okay. Returning to the meeting room, he drew out the other woman in the same manner. The two men left the meeting room, but sought to return. As prayer was being offered at the close of the meeting, the second of the two men came to the door and began to speak. The door was closed against him. He opened the door and again began to speak. Then the power of God fell upon my husband. The color left his face as he arose from his knees. He lifted his hands before the man, exclaiming, "The Lord does not want your testimony here. The Lord does not want you here to distract and crush his people." The power of God filled the room. The man looked terrified and stumbled backward through the hall into another room. He staggered across this room and fell against the wall, then recovered his balance and found the door out of the house. The presence of the Lord, which was so painful to the fanatical sinners, impressed with awful solemnity the company assembled. But after the children of darkness had gone, a sweet peace from the Lord rested upon our company. After this meeting, the false and wily professors of perfect holiness were never able to re-establish their power over our brethren. The experiences of this meeting won us the confidence and fellowship of Brother Butler. Okay, so what can we see here?
So, was können wir hier sehen?
Yeah, the power of God filled the room,
So, der Kraft Gottes hat den Raum gefüllt.
and then who had to leave?
Dann, wer musste gehen?
It's like when the Lord revealed himself to Daniel, those that couldn't bear his presence fled before him, but Daniel
Es ist wie, als wenn der Herr seine Gegenwart Daniel offenbarten. Die es nicht ertragen konnte, sind geflüchtet.
Exactly. Okay. And what did you say?
Like express darkness also, right? Dark angel, single angel.
Yes. Okay. So basically, Satan and his angels got kicked out, right?
Also Satan und seinen Engeln sind hinausgeworfen.
And what was the result?
Und was war der Resultat?
peace.
Peace, right?
Friede.
Okay. So when we go now to Revelation chapter 12,
So, wenn wir zur Offenbarung Kapitel 12 gehen,
verse 7 to 9,
die Verse 7 bis 9.
it says, "And there was war in heaven." What was there?
Und was gab es?
War.
War.
Krieg.
So it's a time of war.
Eine
Okay.
Zeit des Krieges.
Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels, and prevailed not, neither was their place found any more in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. So, therefore, what was now in heaven?
So, deswegen, was gab es folglich im Himmel?
Peace, right?
Friede.
Okay, so there's therefore this war and then the peace.
Es
Okay?
gibt dieses Krieg und danach Friede.
And we see the peace comes when God manifests His glory and the wicked need to flee away.
Wir können
Okay?
sehen, dass dass Friede kommt, wenn der Herr seine Herrlichkeit manifestiert und die Bösen wegfliehen
Okay.
musste.
And we understand when is it therefore that the wicked get cast out.
So deswegen, wann ist es, wenn die Bösen hinausgeworfen
The
werden?
execution.
Yes. Which is always,
Das Ausführen des Gerichtes, was immer,
okay, it's always at the end of the war or the beginning of the time of peace, right?
immer am Ende des Krieges oder am Anfang der kleinen Zeit des Friedens.
Okay, so in this sense, it's always marks here, right?
Angel
In
comes
diesem
down.
Sinne ist es immer hier markiert,
Where now Satan gets kicked out,
wo
okay?
Satan hinausgeworfen wird.
Okay. Or likewise here,
Oder ähnlich da am Ende.
okay. So, but I want to illustrate it here for now, okay?
Ich möchte es hier darstellen.
So, Satan,
It says in the parables, are cast into outer darkness.
yes.
Die Gleichnissen, es sagt, dass er in äußere Finsternis hinausgeworfen wird.
So kicked out or cast out, okay.
So hinausgeworfen, ausgetrieben.
Okay, and the result is then a time of peace.
Und
Okay.
der Resultat ist dann eine Zeit des Friedens.
Okay, now let's go to another thought that we will now bring together with this topic.
Jetzt ein anderer Gedanke, die wir aber mit diesem Thema zusammenbringen wollen.
Okay, let's go to Romans 6,
Gehen wir zu Römer 6,
verses 3 to 4.
die Versen 3 und 4.
It says, Know ye not that so many of us as were baptized into Jesus Christ were baptized into his death? Therefore we are buried with him by baptism into death, that like as Christ was raised up from the dead by the glory of the Father, even so we also should walk in newness of life. Okay, so what is baptism?
So, was ist die Taufe?
Yes, it's a death and resurrection,
Ein
right?
Tod und eine Auferstehung.
And it illustrates a new birth,
Und es
right?
stellt eine Neugeburt dar,
Because you now walk in newness of life.
weil du jetzt in der Neuheit des Lebens wandelst.
Okay. Now let's go to Hosea chapter 6,
Jetzt Hosea 6,
verse 1 and 2.
Versen 1 und 2.
It says, Come and let us return unto the Lord, for he hath torn, and he will heal us. He hath smitten, and he will bind us up. After 2 days will he revive us, and the third day he will raise us up, and we shall live in his sight. Okay, so what can we see here?
Was können wir hier sehen?
3 days.
Yes, 3 days, and at the end thereof, what happens to you?
3 Tage und am Ende davon, was geschieht mit
He
dir?
raises us up.
Yeah, you're raised up, which is the new birth. Okay.
Du wirst aufgerichtet werden, was das Neugeburt ist.
Yes, and according to verse 1, it's he heals you. Okay.
Und gemäß Vers 1, er heilt dich.
So the new birth is the healing.
Das
Right?
Neugeburt ist Heilung.
Okay. Now Daniel 12:12.
Das ist Daniel Kapitel 12, Vers 12.
Blessed is he that waiteth and cometh to the 1335 days. So what is this?
Was ist das hier?
The blessing.
It's the blessing,
Resurrection.
right? It's the
Es ist der
resurrection.
Segen, es ist der Auferstehung.
Okay. But where is it?
Aber wo ist es?
At the end.
Am
At the end,
Ende,
right? At the time appointed.
Zur bestimmten Zeit.
Okay, so here we have the true illustration of a true birth.
So,
Okay.
hier haben wir eine wahre Darstellung von einem wahren Geburt.
And it's always at the end.
Es ist immer am
Mhm.
Ende.
And it's a death and resurrection and a healing.
Es ist ein Tod und eine Auferstehung und eine Heilung.
Okay, but for every true, there's also a counterfeit.
Aber für jedes Wahre, es gibt auch eine Fälschung.
Okay, now let's go to Revelation 13, verse 3.
Jetzt Offenbarung 13, Vers 3.
It says, And I saw one of his heads, as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world wondered after the beast.
Apparently healed.
Yes. So, what happened here to the papacy.
So, was geschah hier mit der Papst?
Claims to be healed.
Yes. So it's the death and a
Ein Tod
resurrection.
und
Okay.
eine Auferstehung.
Okay, but where?
Aber wo?
At the beginning.
At the beginning.
Am
Okay.
Anfang.
So, because when you look at this line here,
Denn wenn du diese Linie hier anschaust,
yeah, this would be your birth, right?
das wäre dein Geburt sein.
So it's the birth for the true one, for the God's people.
So, es ist die Geburt für die Wahren, für Gottes Volk.
But for Satan it's what?
Aber für Satan ist es was?
The death,
Es
right?
ist Tod.
Deadly wound.
So, tödliche Wunde.
Okay. But when you come here,
Und wenn du hier ankommst,
what happens with Satan's deadly wound?
was geschieht mit Satan, seine tödliche Wunde?
It's healed,
Es ist
right?
geheilt.
Okay, so
You go into captivity, and he claims to be out of captivity.
yes, exactly.
Du gehst
Yes.
in die Gefangenschaft ein und er behauptet, von der Gefangenschaft frei zu sein.
And he claims to be healed now. Okay.
Er behauptet, hier geheilt zu sein.
So he claims to be born again there.
Er
Okay.
behauptet, da vom Neuen geboren zu sein.
Okay. But the same applies to the next step. Okay.
Aber dasselbe ist der nächste Schritt
Okay.
anzugehen.
So at least in principle.
Zumindest im Prinzip.
Because when you go now down this lower fractal,
Denn wenn du hier auf diesen untere Fraktal kommst,
again here God's people receive a blessing.
so
Okay.
hier wieder Gottes Volk erhalten einen Segen,
But Satan gets kicked out.
aber
Okay.
Satan wird hinausgeworfen.
And here again, Satan, receives apparent healing. Okay.
Hier wieder Satan erhält scheinbare Heilung.
So at every of these levels,
So auf jeder von diesen Ebenen
it's like a counterfeit birth experience.
ist
Okay.
wie eine gefälschte Geburtserfahrung.
So Satan always wants to be born again at the beginning.
Satan möchte immer von Neuem geboren werden am Anfang.
And how do we know this?
Und woher wissen wir das?
Because you're born at the end,
Weil
right?
du bist am Ende geboren.
So it's the seventh
Das ist der
plague, right?
7. Plage,
Which is also the seventh
was auch der 7.
day,
Tag
right?
ist.
Okay, the Sabbath.
Dies, den Sabbat.
Okay, but what is Satan's holy day?
Aber was ist Satans heiliger Tag?
The first day.
Der
Okay.
erste Tag.
So God heals you on the Sabbath day at the end,
Gott heilt dich am Sabbattag am Ende,
the seventh day.
der 7. Tag.
But Satan, his day is the first day.
Aber
Okay?
Satan, sein Tag ist der erste Tag,
This is where he heals you.
wo
Okay.
er dich heilt.
So, and he's always this hasty fruit. Yeah, he always wants to be perfect at the beginning and not wait until the end.
Und er ist diese voreilige Frucht. Er möchte immer perfekt am Anfang sein und nicht bis auf das Ende warten.
Okay. So therefore, also here, when you just go to the last bit,
So,
okay,
deswegen hier, wenn du nur zu dieser letzten Teil hier gehst,
which would be then this illustration here.
dass
Okay.
diese Darstellung hier sein wird.
So he wants to be healed. Okay, I mean you can even make it for our first group. Okay,
So, für unsere erste Gruppe kannst du das so machen.
he says you're healed here.
Er sagt,
Healed
dass
here.
du bist
Okay.
hier geheilt.
Okay, and who's this?
Und wer ist das?
I mean, who is it?
Just
Judas,
the fruit.
hasty fruit, the false prophets.
I mean it's Elihu, right?
Elihu.
Oh, that's okay.
Yes.
Yes, the lion.
Okay, so but you must endure this little bit.
Aber
Okay.
du musst dieses kleine Stück noch ausharren.
Okay. And what did we see when you come here to this little time of peace, just before, which would be then till here,
Und
right?
was haben wir gesehen, wenn du zu dieser kleinen Zeit des Friedens kommst, die bis hier andauert?
What does Christ say to you?
Was sagt Christus zu dir?
What are you here?
Was bist du hier?
Yeah, you're clean,
Ihr
right?
seid rein.
But what do you still need?
Aber was brauchst du noch?
Higher cleansing.
Yeah, the higher cleansing, right?
Höhere Reinigung,
The foot washing.
die Fußwaschung.
And unless you receive the foot washing, you cannot have part in him,
Und
right?
es sei denn, dass du die Fußwaschung erhältst, kannst du keinen Teil an Christus
So
haben.
Satan, he claims you to be holy already here,
So Satan behauptet, dass du hier jetzt heilig bist,
before you receive this.
noch
Okay.
bevor du das erhältst.
So it's always the same. Satan wants to tell you you're ready before the time appointed.
Immer
Okay.
dasselbe. Satan möchte behaupten, dass du fertig bist oder abgeschlossen bist, noch bevor der bestimmte Zeit.
Okay, so let's go now back to our notes.
So, zu den Notizen zurück.
So just some further confirmation about this counterfeit birth.
So,
Okay.
einige weitere Bestätigungen über diese falsches Geburt.
Revelation 20,
Offenbarung 20,
verses 1 to 3 for now,
die Versen 1 bis 3 vorerst
and then verse 7.
und danach Vers 7.
It says, and I saw an angel come down from heaven, having the key of the bottomless pit, and a great chain in his hand. So where's this?
So wo ist das hier?
It's at the end.
Yes, it's at the end, right?
Am Ende.
Or the beginning of the 1,000 years, time of
Das
peace.
Anfang von kleine Zeit des Friedens oder 1000 Jahre.
Okay, and I just mark now the principle of it.
Ich markiere das Prinzip davon hier.
So this angel comes down with the key of the bottomless pit.
Engel kommt herab mit diesem Schlüssel zum Abgrund.
And then verse 2.
Vers 2.
And he laid hold on the dragon, that old serpent, which is the devil and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years, and cast him into the bottomless pit, and shut him up, and set a seal upon him, that he should deceive the nations no more, till the 1,000 years should be fulfilled, and after that he must be loosed a little season. Okay, so in this, where is he now?
So wo ist er jetzt?
In the bottomless pit.
In
Okay.
der Abgrund.
And this would then also, in principle, apply to the lower fractals, right?
Das wäre dann im Prinzip auch diese kleineren Fraktalen anzuwenden.
And when he's there, what is he not permitted to do?
Und wenn er da ist, was ist ihm nicht gestattet zu tun?
To deceive, right?
So zu verführen.
But then he comes out,
Aber danach kommt er heraus
Great power.
and yes, and he will deceive immediately.
und
Okay?
er wird sofort verführen.
He will deceive all those that lose their
Connection.
connection with Christ in the little time of peace.
Er wird
Okay?
all diejenigen verführen, die ihre Verbindung mit Christus während der kleinen Zeit des Friedens verloren haben.
Okay. And when you jump down now to verse 7,
Wenn wir zu Vers 7 hinunterkommen,
it says, and when the 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison. Okay, so the bottomless pit is
Prison.
a prison,
so
right?
der Abgrund ist ein Gefängnis.
It's like when Jonah.
Yes, exactly.
Jonah was in prison.
Yeah.
Wie
So,
Jona ist im Gefängnis.
therefore, what is the prison or the bottomless pit?
Deswegen, was ist das Gefängnis?
Counterfeit valley.
Yes, it's a counterfeit belly,
Also
right?
eine gefälschte
It's a
Baucherfahrung,
false grave,
eine
okay.
falsche Grab,
death and resurrection.
Tod
Okay?
und Auferstehung.
Because when you go now to Revelation 17, verse 8,
Wenn du zur Offenbarung 17, Vers 8 jetzt gehst,
the beast that thou sawest was and is not and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit. So what will the beast do?
was wird das Tier tun?
Resurrected. Okay,
Auferstehen.
comes out of the bottomless pit.
Kommt aus dem Abgrund heraus.
Yeah, right here.
Gerade hier.
So it's a counterfeit resurrection.
So ist eine falsche Auferstehung.
Okay. But it says, and go into perdition, this would be then again here, right?
Aber es sagt, geht wieder ins Verderben. Das wäre dann hier am Ende sein.
So always the same pattern, yeah. It gets a deadly wound,
Immer derselbe Muster, erhält eine Todeswunde,
goes into the bottomless pit,
geht ins Abgrund hinein,
comes out of the bottomless pit,
kommt heraus aus dem Abgrund,
but will go again into perdition.
aber
Okay?
wird wieder ins Verderben gehen
And so on and so forth.
und so weiter.
So also Daniel 7, verse 2
Auch Daniel 7, Vers 2
and 3.
und Vers 3.
Daniel spake and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of the heavens drove upon the great sea, and four great beasts came up from the sea, diverse one from another. Okay, so where do they come up from?
Wo kommen sie herab?
According to Revelation, the resurrection, they come out of the sea. I think it's in the back of Revelations, that not they come out they come out of the graves out of the sea.
Yes.
It's in 22, 1, something like that.
In Offenbarung 21.
I can't remember when it is, but I know it's one of these last chapters.
20 verse 13? Or? It says, death and hell delivered up the dead.
Yes.
It's Revelation 20 verse 13.
Offenbarung 20, Vers 13.
Yeah, that is, yeah.
And the sea gave up the dead. Yes.
Also
Yes.
das Meer gab ihrem Toten auf.
Yes. And the sea gave up the dead which were in it, and death and hell delivered up the dead which were in them, and they were judged every man according to their works. Yes. Okay. But this would be,
This is a counterfeit coming early, sort of, from when,
yes, because this would be when they get judged. This would be marking the end, right, in this illustration.
yes, no, the point is when they come up there, right, the 7 plagues begin. It's really typifying their judgment because it's a type of the 7 plagues comes upon them.
Ah, okay. Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes. I mean, in the sense that here they begin to be punished.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Yes, but you want to translate this?
Ja, fasse es zusammen.
So Brother Mark, he mentioned the point here in Revelation 20, verse 13.
So, Bruder Mark hat diesen Punkt hier in Offenbarung 20, Vers 13 erwähnt.
And the sea gave up the dead which were in it, and the death and hell delivered up the dead which were in them, so on and so forth. And they were judged, every man according to their works.
Also sie waren gerichtet, jedermann gemäß ihrer Werke.
So here you see they get brought out of the sea.
So, hier können wir sehen, dass die aus dem Meer herausgebracht
And in
werden.
Daniel 7 we also saw the 4 beasts came out of the sea.
Und in Daniel 7 haben wir eben gelesen, dass die 4 Tiere auch aus dem Meer emporkamen.
We understand Daniel 7 marks the 4 beasts coming out of the sea in the Sunday law. Right?
Aber wir verstehen in Daniel 7, die 4 Tiere kommen aus dem Meer am Sonntagsgesetz hier.
But also in some sense they get judged here as the 7 last plagues begin here to be poured out in type.
Aber in gewissem Sinne, sie werden hier gerichtet, weil die 7 letzten Plagen in Typus werden hier
He
ausgegossen.
says hold, because that's what he goes to punish them, but then he holds the
Yes.
winds back.
Er sagt, halte die 4 Winde.
Okay.
Also er will sie bestrafen, aber er hält sie zurück.
So therefore you can see here they come out of the sea and they get punished.
So hier können wir sehen, sie kommen aus dem Meer heraus und sie werden bestraft.
Okay, but what is it illustrating when you come out of the sea?
Aber was stellt es dar, wenn du aus dem Meer herauskommst? A resurrection.
Yes, it's a counterfeit baptism in a sense.
So
Okay,
eine Auferstehung, eine falsche Taufe sozusagen.
okay,
Yeah,
so
because God's people went through the Red Sea, were baptized in the sea, it says, right? So
Yes.
this is the same thing.
Gottes Volk sind durch den Roten Meer gegangen, sie wurden ins Meer getauft und das hier ist dasselbe, nur eine falsche.
yes, so we can see here because this is now Satan. This is what it says, invigorating them with his satanic power.
Wir
Okay,
sagen, dass das hier ist Satan, Ellen White, er wühlt sie auf mit seinem Kraft.
so they get his spirit here.
Sie
Okay?
erhalten seinen Geist hier.
But the true baptism, God's people is here or here.
Und die wahre Taufe von Gottes Volk ist eben hier oder hier am Ende.
Okay, so but now let's go also to Revelation 11
Aber jetzt gehen wir zur Offenbarung 11,
and verse 7.
Vers 7.
Says, and when they shall have finished their testimony, the beast that ascendeth out of the bottomless pit shall make war against them and shall overcome them and kill them. So where do we mark this?
Wo markieren wir das?
The Pentecost, the second.
Yes, I mean the
Also,
beast
das-
comes up
Also das Tier kommt herauf.
from where?
Von wo?
The bottomless pit, right?
Das Abgrund.
Okay, but we understand at
This
least
is-
at the moment that the Revelation 11 marks
Yes,
this
the
period,
second.
Aber wir verstehen, dass Offenbarung 11 markiert eben diese Periode hier.
okay, and at the end of the 1260, when the time is cut short, it comes up.
Am Ende der 1260, wo
Hier,
der
oh.
Zeit verkürzt wird,
Hier.
kommt er herauf, eben hier oder hier.
Or in this fractal here.
Oder in diesem Fraktal hier.
Yes, everybody
Amen.
follows?
Kann jeder folgen?
Okay. So, therefore again we can see it's after a little time of peace that it comes out of the bottomless pit.
Deswegen können
Okay.
wir sehen, es ist wieder nach einer Zeit des Friedens, wo er aus dem Abgrund heraufkommt.
Okay. So, it's always the same pattern.
Es ist
yeah?
immer denselben Mustern.
And what does Sister White say when this power comes out of the bottomless pit? What does it illustrate?
So, was sagt Ellen White, wenn diese Kraft aus dem bodenlosen Abgrund heraufkommt, was stellt es dar? A new manifestation of satanic power.
Exactly.
Eine
Okay.
neue Manifestation der satanischen Kraft.
Because we saw it's Satan that gets put in the bottomless pit and then he's loosed after this 1000 years.
Wir haben gesehen, dass es Satan ist, der in den Abgrund gebunden wird und dann wird er nach diesen 1000 Jahren losgelassen.
Okay. Alright. Everybody follows?
Kann jeder folgen?
Okay. Therefore, what can we then expect when we now lay our line on this again?
So,
Okay.
deswegen, was können wir erwarten, wenn wir jetzt unsere Linie hier wieder drauflegen?
We are just before this here, right?
So, wir stehen gerade vor dieser Zeit des Friedens.
Okay. So therefore we can expect that we enter now this little time of peace.
So, wir können erwarten, dass wir in diese kleine Zeit des Friedens hineinkommen.
But what must we always keep in mind?
Aber was müssen wir immer vor Augen halten?
This new manifestation of satanic
Yes, there's a new manifestation of satanic power coming.
Diese
Okay.
neue Manifestation der satanischen Kraft, der kommt.
Okay. So, and this is what we need to constantly prepare ourselves in this time.
Und in dieser Zeit hier müssen wir uns beständig darauf vorbereiten.
Because we saw, for instance, at Mount Sinai, when they were there for 2 years,
Denn wir haben gesehen, zum Beispiel bei Sinai, als sie da 2 Jahre lang waren,
it was a time of preparation.
es
Right?
war eine Zeit des
And
Vorbereitens.
we also read in the French Reformation,
Und wir haben auch gelesen in der französischen Reformation,
a time of peace intervened in order to prepare them for the
also eine Zeit des Friedens kam auf, um sie für was vorzubereiten?
time of tempest, right?
Für der Zeit des Wirbelsturms.
Okay, so therefore this is this tempest that will come.
So deswegen das hier ist dieser Wirbelsturm, der aufkommen wird.
Okay. Now let's go to this.
That's what Ezekiel saw. He saw the whirlwind.
Das ist, was Hesekiel sah, der Wirbelsturm.
Okay, so let's go now to this next and last quote.
So, gehen wir zu diesem letzten Zitat.
It says, like the angels, speaking now about Adam and Eve, okay?
Spricht über Adam und Eva hier.
Like the angels, the dwellers in Eden had been placed upon probation. Their happy estate could be retained only on condition of fidelity to the Creator's law. Okay, so where were they,
So, wo waren sie?
prophetically speaking?
Prophetisch gesehen.
In the garden.
Yes, in the garden, which is the
Garten,
Peace.
time of peace,
das
yes,
der Zeit des Friedens ist,
and which is the land,
was
exactly.
das Land
Okay.
ist.
So, therefore also here, we will enter prophetically the land,
So,
okay,
deswegen hier werden wir prophetischerweise das Land hineinkommen,
in this time of peace.
diese Zeit des Friedens.
But it's only given on probation.
Aber
Okay.
es ist nur auf Probezeit gegeben.
So when we go to the greater fractal here,
Also wenn wir zu diesem größeren Fraktal hier gehen,
yeah, the civil Sunday law,
das zivile Sonntagsgesetz,
you enter the land, right?
du kommst in das Land hinein.
But it's only on probation,
Aber
okay?
es ist nur auf Probe,
Because the first birth is not enough,
weil
okay?
die erste Geburt reicht nicht aus.
And you must maintain until you enter here,
Du
okay?
musst es aufbewahren, bis du hier am Ende hineinkommst.
Because there's still this test awaiting you.
Weil es
Okay.
gibt immer noch diesen Test, der dich erwartet.
Okay, and this is the Garden of Eden test.
Das ist das
Okay.
Garten-Eden-Test.
The Garden of Eden test is illustrated in these different fractals.
Der
Okay?
Garten-Eden-Test ist in diese verschiedenen Fraktalen dargestellt.
It's just greater and greater in intensity.
Es ist
Okay?
nur größer und größer in Ausmaß, Intensität.
Okay, and you must withstand these 3 falling aways. Okay,
Du musst diese drei verschiedene Wegfallen widerstehen.
okay. So let's now continue in the quote.
Lass uns diesen Zitat weiterlesen.
They could obey and live, or disobey and perish. So it's all about God's law,
So, es handelt sich alles über Gottes Gesetz.
and it's this, therefore the Sunday law test,
Und
right?
deswegen ist es das Sonntagsgesetz Test.
Yes, the Sunday law tests you whether you're true to God's law or not.
Das Sonntagsgesetz testet dich, ob du nun Gottes Gesetz treu bist oder eben nicht.
In our time, it's obviously the vaccination. Okay.
In unserer Zeit, das ist der Impfzwang.
Okay. God had made them the recipients of rich blessings, but should they disregard his will, he who spared not the angels that sinned could not spare them. Transgression would forfeit his gifts and bring upon them misery and ruin. The angels warned them to be on their guard against the devices of Satan, for his efforts to ensnare them would be unwearied. Okay, so they were here in the land, and what did they receive?
So, sie waren hier im Land und was erhielten sie?
Warning.
A warning.
Eine
Okay.
Warnung,
That this will come.
dass
Okay.
dies hier kommen wird.
And we can already see, the Lord already begins to warn us now already, right?
Und wir können jetzt schon bereits sehen, dass der Herr uns auch jetzt schon bereits warnt.
Because in some sense, we are already delivered, right?
Denn im gewissen Sinn sind wir bereits befreit.
So, in yeah, we already need to prepare now in order to stand this test. Okay.
Wir müssen aber auch jetzt vorbereiten, um diesen Test zu bestehen.
While they were obedient to God, the evil one could not harm them. For if need be, every angel in heaven would be sent to their help. If they steadfastly repelled his first insinuations, they would be as secure as the heavenly messengers. But should they once yield to temptation, their nature would become so depraved that in themselves they would have no power, no disposition to resist Satan. The tree of knowledge had been made a test of their obedience and their love to God. So that's basically always the test. Okay?
So, das ist immer der Test,
It's always this Garden of Eden test.
diesen
Okay.
Garten-Eden-Test.
The Lord had seen fit to lay upon them but one prohibition as to the use of all that was in the garden. But if they should disregard his will in this particular, they would incur the guilt of transgression. Satan was not to follow them with continual temptations. He could have access to them only at the forbidden tree. Should they attempt to investigate its nature, they would be exposed to his wiles. They were admonished to give careful heed to the warning which God had sent them and to be content with the instruction which he had seen fit to impart. Okay, and therefore this is what we need to do. Yeah, we need to give careful heed to the warning which God gives us.
Und
Gibt's das?
deswegen, das ist, was wir tun müssen. Wir müssen sorgsam Aufmerksamkeit zu die Warnung geben, die Gott uns gegeben hat.
Ja.
Amen.
And we can clearly see that there will come a group here that claim to be resurrected. Okay.
Wir können sehen, dass es hier eine Gruppe aufkommen werden, die behaupten, auferweckt zu werden,
Auferweckt zu sein.
auferweckt zu sein,
Ja.
geben.
So it's always about this topic about the new birth. Okay.
So, es ist immer dieses Thema über das Neugeburt.
And unless we prepare ourselves, understand really the plan of salvation correctly in this time, we will be deceived here by these false messages.
Und es sei denn, dass wir uns vorbereiten und dass wir die Erlösungsplan in dieser Zeit korrekt verstehen, dann werden wir verführt werden mit diesen falschen Propheten.
Yes. Everybody could follow?
Kann jeder folgen?
Okay. So it's nice. We can clearly see these patterns now
Es ist schön, dass wir diesen Mustern klar sehen können,
illustrated.
wie
Okay.
sie dargestellt sind.
Good. So these were the thoughts I wanted to share this evening.
So, das waren die Gedanken, die ich heute mitteilen wollte.
And yeah, let's take the admonitions
Und lasst uns die Warnungen wahrnehmen.
and let's close them with our prayer round.
Und lasst uns jetzt mit unserer Gebetsrunde Schluss machen.